Hi, I'm Rick Lobdell, and today we're going to learn more about how to hand brush with our stains. My last article, I talked about how to hand brush with acid stain. I talked about how to hold the brush, nothing changes there, and I'll go into all those details. And how when you brush, you use your whole arm, and you kind of almost push a puddle along. Today is completely different. We're going to work with acetone dyes. And many people have told me that you should not brush or cannot brush acetone dyes, and I'm here to prove to you otherwise. I've done many videos with me doing acetone dyes, brushing them, spraying them. I have 3 national awards, one or two polishing, all of them with hand brushing dye. I've never had an issue with it, but it's not easy. There's a certain technique I have, a certain way I do it. I'm not saying I'm the only one that does it. But regardless, today I want to work on kind of showing you how I break down acetone dyes and how you can utilize them with a brush and speed up your process. Because let's be serious here, whatever speeds up our process to make us more money is the priority. So, first of all, there are multiple different types of dye. There are polishing dyes, there are interior dyes, exterior dyes, or UV stable dyes. It doesn't matter which dye. I've used them all, and again, I have videos and awards with different companies' dyes. So today we're working with Surf Coat's exterior dye. It's a really good dye. The great thing I like about it is it's liquid. So with it being liquid, I don't have to mix it ahead of time. I can add it as I need it. With the powdered dyes, you have to worry about mixing it ahead of time, making sure that the powder breaks down. You know, you want to mix it a couple hours in advance to a day in advance. The great thing about the liquid is it breaks down instantly in the acetone. You don't want to mix anything else into it really. They do have a great penetrating agent that works great with it also. That's something I'd recommend. But outside of that, it's straight acetone. The difference is what I do is I follow it with denatured alcohol. And that's where I clean up all my lines. Because yes, I'm going to make a lot of lines. Let's be honest here. I'm going to make a lot of lines. I'm going to make a mess. It dries so fast. Acetone flashes in seconds. There is no way to just put it down and make it look perfect. But I have found ways to manipulate it and help to my advantage. So let's go over that. First and foremost, remember how to hold your brush. We want to focus on holding it almost like you're holding a pencil. You don't want to hold it up here. You don't want to hold it too low either. You want to hold it kind of in the middle, right in this area. When you dip, remember we were talking about with acetone, with the acid stains, when you dip, it's going to kind of sit down here with the acid stain and it's not really going to soak in very much, and you don't want to dip up to here because it's going to get stuck in here. What you're going to see in a second with the acetone dyes is it's not going to sit here. It's going to wick instantaneously right into here. And we have to be very careful not to let too much get into here, because when we go to start, we'll drip everywhere. And even with acetone dyes, drips will show up. So we have to be careful. So the first thing, if you remember last time, when I go to dip, you want to be very careful to dip, and you're going to see instantaneously it's just going to wick right up. And you can't see, yeah, there it goes. See it coming out of the top? So it quickly goes right into it, and it just soaks right in. See, look how much is up in there. We got to be very careful about that, because you can see it's pouring back out of the metal already. So remember from last time, we dipped, 1, 2, and look, no dripping. Okay? Now, when I start to brush this, it's going to look like a mess. I'm not going to make it easy. I'm not going to make it look good. I'm going to make it as bad as I possibly can just to show you how much I can fix it. So watch this. 1, 2. I'll try to talk a little bit while I'm working, but I've learned that it is hard to brush and talk at the same time. You want to be careful not to make too big of a puddle with this part. You can actually put it down as dry as you want to and make as many marks as you want to. It's all going to fix itself on the next coat. And I'm just moving back and forth. See how I'm moving my entire arm as I'm brushing. Same thing I'm going to do with the denatured. But I'm just constantly moving back and forth across the edges. Remember to get all the way to your edges on both parts of it. If you leave an area without the acetone dye down first, it won't get as much color on it when you use the denatured. So it won't really help you. You really want to make sure you cover the entire thing as you're going. And I probably should have made this a little darker, but I think I'll get the point across still. See if I can make worse brush marks for you too. See how I'm getting all the way to the edge as I'm brushing, coming around the corner pretty fast. The great thing about this is if you do 2 people, one person can go as fast as they want with the acetone, and the second person can take their time with the denatured. And that way you don't really have to stress about it. You don't want to wait too long. You don't want to put all this down and come back the next day with the denatured. The acetone dye will start to harden up and kind of soak in a little bit over time, and you want to be careful about that. So we don't want to take all day and wait a couple hours before we do the second part of this. We want to kind of follow right behind just to be safe. I've done it both ways. It works. Sometimes I've had to work a little harder to break down the dye, but for the most part, I have had really good success doing this. All right, I wasn't happy with how light that first round went, so I added a little bit more dye to it. Again, the great thing about it is the fact that we can just add as we go. You don't have to have it all mixed perfectly the first time. This is much better. See how much darker it is? So I just wanted to do it one more time. Figured I would go ahead and take advantage of doing that on camera and show you even more brush marks as I'm going, to show you again that I'm going to fix all of that as it goes. You can even see while I'm doing this that the existing dye that was already there is moving around and changing too. The great thing about using chemicals is the fact that you can break things down pretty easily with them. That's why it's a lot harder sometimes to use water-based on everything. And you know, another thing with even using acid stains is you can't do that kind of stuff. Whatever you put down, it's really hard to remove a brush stroke or make a mark that won't go away, or a drip that's permanent. Those kind of things you don't have to worry about as much with the dyes. They're very forgiving because you can always use more chemicals to kind of fix things. Finish up this edge. Now you can see I've got this puddle here, I've got marks all over the place. Now I'm going to take denatured alcohol, and I have a lot less to worry about. Of course, I don't really want to drip anywhere, but it's clear at the moment. It's going to slowly get a little tiny bit of material in it, but just a little tiny bit. So if you drip, you don't have to stress too much about it. You got to be a little careful. So the same theory applies. I still want to go like this and stop having too much on here. I don't want to sit here and take all of that with me. You see that pouring. I don't want to just go from there onto the floor just because it's clear. You still have to be careful. I'm always careful. All right, so let's try this out. So you want to remember, when you follow with the denatured, you're kind of going to make a puddle, just a little bit of a puddle. You don't want to make a big puddle that's going to flood your whole floor, but you kind of want to make a puddle, move the puddle, and leave it alone. You might see a couple brush marks inside of the puddle, but if you watch, they'll disappear as it kind of lays out before it starts to dry. The great thing about denatured alcohol is it takes a lot longer to dry. So just like we did before, you want to just start putting it down, be careful of your corner, and look how quickly I get rid of, see my little puddle I'm making, and I'm just moving my puddle, and look, it's getting rid of every single brush mark that was there, instantaneously. Sometimes you have to work a couple out, like right here, I might have to work this in just a little bit, but look at that, disappear, completely gone. And the less you do, like it is right now, just leave it alone. Don't overwork it, don't keep going in the same place. If you let it dry, it will leave a brush mark also. So you kind of want to just keep pushing that puddle, similar to what we did with acid stain, just keep pushing that puddle, but then work through some of your brush marks. They will disappear. And remember, when I'm brushing, you see me using my entire arm. I'm holding the brush like we were talking about, and I'm moving my entire arm. I'm not going like this because it'll start to flick more. You'll have less flicking, less splatter if you take your time and use your whole arm as you go. And I kind of just do big swirls, hit my edges, big swooping swirls, kind of try to fill the whole thing at one time as I'm going. And you can already see how much better that first half looks to the second half. I mean, it's completely different. It's very obvious. Great thing about denatured also is since it takes a little while to dry, it does help kind of absorb some of the dye into the floor a little bit more. Now, I'm not an expert on the porosity of concrete and how well that actually works, so don't quote me on everything I'm saying, but you can see right here, clearly it's looking so much better, and I'm not leaving any of the brush marks I originally had. nice big swooping circles. Make sure you get to the edge right there, just to stop. There you go. And you can see there's a little bit of material in there, but not much. It really doesn't take much away. It mostly just breaks it down and evens it out and helps get rid of most of the brush marks. All right, so there you go. You can see you might have a tiny little bit of brush mark still showing, but it looks like great modeling. There's no sharp edges. It doesn't look like a mess. It's going to seal great. One thing I want to point out too is that I started here, went all the way around and had to finish here. And you can remember with acid stain, I talked about how hard it is to finish that edge and how you have to kind of create a modeling to it. It almost takes care of itself. If you're careful with the way you finish it, you really won't have a sharp edge like you do with acid stain. Since this isn't a reaction, it really kind of fades into itself with this denatured alcohol technique. So remember, first, how to hold the brush like a pencil or a pen, how to dip the brush, and make sure that you don't over dip into the metal, and you want to drip twice before you leave the cup so you don't make a mess. Remember to use your whole arm as you're brushing, and it doesn't really matter on the acetone because you're going to make a mess. There's no way for you to not make a brush mark and not make it look kind of awful at first. It's going to happen. And then after you're done, you follow with denatured alcohol. It's going to be clear, it's going to give you a little bit of color, but you're not going to have a whole lot of color lift or removal. And you're going to do the same thing, dip, drip twice, lift, start painting. And just take your time, big swooping circles, cover the whole thing from edge to edge, and just make sure you make it clean. If you do this and you have a couple brush marks you can't stand, redo that area, but redo an area. Don't just redo just that one spot. You could also take a sprayer and do a little bit of spray over that spot. Sometimes that will kind of loosen up some of the edges. But the most important thing is to get rid of all your hard edges that happen from a brush. So I want to thank Surf Coat for letting me use their material for this, and have a great day.